Welcome back to Energetically You, a podcast where we talk all things healthy habits, abundant mindset, and optimal wellness. I'm your host, Megan Swan, the creator of the Sustainable Integrated Wellness Approach. And I love to interview women of all sorts of backgrounds that have been on their own journey and wish to share some of their insights, some of their knowledge, some of their takeaways and reflections on that journey. There's always something to learn from someone else's experience. And so today I had the honor of interviewing Verity Dimock. She started her career in corporate learning and development 10 years ago. Which made a transition to leadership roles in non-for-profit operations and program development, most recently at Venture for Canada. She's been engaged in community projects focused on equity, inclusivity, and well-being with Equal Voice, Evergreen Brickworks, and the Thorncliffe Neighborhood Office. Today, Verity is splitting her time between helping to scale a technology-driven social innovation project called stonesoupnetwork.ca. I can't wait to hear all about it. It's so amazing. And building a coaching business dedicated to empowering new graduates during their job search with strategy-first tools and tactics designed specifically for our virtual world. So I can't wait for you to meet her. Let's dive in. Welcome back to Energetically You. Today I have the honor of interviewing Verity Dimock. Is that correct?
Verity.
What does that name mean? I haven't heard it before, but it's so interesting. And I have.
It means truth.
It means truth.
Yes.
And what's the origin?
Interestingly, so it was a family name on my mother's side. And my dad was, it was brand new to him. He'd never really heard it. And so they flipped a coin. The other option was Jillian, and Verity won. So I could have been Jillian, but I ended up being Verity.
I love that. Well, in Spanish, verdad, and I'm sure there's a similar word in French that I'm forgetting right now. But anyway, I apologize. I'm pretty bad with names, but thank you for telling us all about the history. And I love that it means truth. That's such like a sweet, pure name. So here we are, and we connected through LinkedIn. I love so much of the work that you are doing, particularly inspiring young graduates and the newest project. So why don't you tell us about how your journey to get to where you are today in terms of, it was like quite a leap from one place to the other, from corporate to coaching.
Sure. Well, I think that, the word today is people are going to have 5 careers, maybe more, in their lifetime. That was probably not the prediction when I graduated from university and started my career. But I think I've sort of had 3, groupings, right, to my career. So like a lot of people, I started out in the corporate world. And I moved into the training and development space, and I got pretty good at building training programming. And I built a couple of leadership programs, in corporate Canada in the fintech space. And actually, when the government of Ontario, where I live, got into the gaming business, I took on building the training and development team in a leadership school for the gaming industry in Ontario. And my kids were really small at that point in time, and I was traveling a ton. And there was a senior management shakeup in the gaming industry. And I used that as an opportunity to take some time off and sort of rethink. And that's when I made the move into the not-for-profit space. somebody that I knew somebody, and they were recruiting for the executive director of a small not-for-profit. And you needed to have a background in education and training. I landed the gig, and, it worked really well because it was 9 to 5, almost no weekend work. So it's perfect with, having a small family with small kids at home. I got pretty good over the last sort of 8 to 10 years at building not-for-profit programming, and scaling not-for-profit programming and not-for-profit brands. And most recently, I was doing that with an internship program and a fellowship program. So programming for students, post-secondary students and graduates who had an interest in entrepreneurship. And like a lot of people over the last year, the COVID had an big impact on the not-for-profit space. So there was a restructuring and I lost my job. And that made me, stop and kind of think, what do I want to do next? I didn't want to just rush right into, job searching. And so I decided that I wanted to try to do something entrepreneurial for myself because I'd done a lot of entrepreneurial work for other people. So a colleague of mine, we teamed up and we've started this side hustle called My Career Launch. So still supporting post-secondary students and graduates with programming to help them launch their careers as they graduate, which is, really tough for young people, particularly during a pandemic. Mm-hmm. And then I'm kind of excited that I also took a paid gig working for the United Church of Canada, who's getting really active in the social innovation space. So they're using some of their money to help the churches, their church membership across Canada, look at some of the key social problems that we face. And they developed this project over the last few years called Stone Soup, or the Stone Soup Network. And I've taken on the opportunity to help them scale that project on a national basis. So
I love that. So can you tell us a little bit more about, and we arrived to present day. Because when you were giving me a little bit of the breakdown, but I love that it's like a high tech solution to not new social problems. So what's new and innovative about it?
Well, what's so great about Stone Soup is the faith-based space is very, very committed to community, which is pretty powerful. We all need community, and we've certainly seen the impact of COVID on community over the last year. The fact that, social isolation has been such a big issue for people, and their communities they're so used to seeing, whether it's at church, at the hockey rink, at work, have all collapsed in many ways. And while, virtually we've replaced some elements of community, there's still, other elements that people are really missing. What Stone Soup has done is they have leveraged, the power of community with the power of technology. And so they have built a platform that enables Stone Soup networks, as we call them, to raise goods and services, so gifts of goods and services that social connectors, people like social workers and ministers and others who work in the social service space, if you will, they can now connect their clients with these gifts of goods and services completely virtually. So think of it as, for example, a dance school that wants to provide dance classes to maybe young people from racialized communities who might not be able to otherwise afford to take dance classes. Somebody identifies this opportunity, and social connectors connect the dance school gift to young people in those communities who can take advantage of them. Or there's a garage that does free tune-ups and free oil changes for neighbors in need. There's a lot of supports for seniors, for example, gifts of monetary gifts, gift cards to pharmacies Seniors have been really hard hit by the pandemic, and it's really hard for them to get neighborhood support. And it's great that we're able to connect them to these pharmacies that want to help. So now, they can purchase much needed health supplies that they might not have otherwise, been able to afford. And maybe their kids who live halfway across the country were giving them, to them before the pandemic, but what if their kids lost their job? So we're leveraging technology to support people in need, in a community driven way.
I love that. So is it just, as you said, goods and services, right? It's not just services. They could give like physical items as well, or it's just...
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that's most in demand in the pilot neighborhood in Parkdale High Park in Toronto, where they have piloted Stone Soup Network for the last 2 and a bit years. New moms, diaper supplies, for example. Mm-hmm. Or there's an organization called Period Purse that provides period supplies, which, as you and I as women know, can be very expensive. Mm-hmm. So things like that. Someone going on a job interview as a newcomer who's very nervous and, has worked hard to prep themselves and maybe put their wardrobe together, but they need a haircut. Mm-hmm. So a local salon or barbershop, when we are giving haircuts, because there's not a lot of those going on right now, but right. When it is safe to give haircuts, that's another in-demand service, for example. So those are some of the ways that Stone Soup Network has been able to, make those connections between businesses who want to help and people who need help. And it's hard for businesses, you're not going to go stand on a street corner with a sign, who needs help, right? So having a platform, a tech platform, makes that easy. And obviously it's data driven, so we can see what the in-demand services are and go out to more businesses and say, do you think you might be able to help? Some of the great feedback that I've heard, because I'm new to this role, but some of the great feedback that I've heard from the folks in the pilot community has been how much it's strengthened neighborhood ties, even with the social distancing and everything else that's happened over the last, year and a bit. The vendors, the business owners get really excited when they're able to help. And they now make friends, with the people in their community whom they might not have been able to meet, otherwise. And they tell other business owners about how good they feel, and more people want to support this project.
Yeah, that's so amazing. Yeah, there are many benefits to virtually connecting with people. I know I've met so many amazing women this year through online interaction, but it's undeniable how important it is that we have the physical connection. And like you say, just getting to know our neighbors, or, really who are the owners of these businesses in our communities. I'm so excited. It's such a great idea. So what if it's a family that wants to donate something that's lightly used? Is that applicable as well, or is it only new things or services?
So over the pilot project, it has only been new goods and services. There are many creative ways that, as the world starts to open up more, we can look at using the platform. We've talked about, so there is another community, not Toronto, but in the eastern part of Ontario, that is likely going to be the second community, and it's quite a sizable community. So that's great. And they're going to, have, I think, 3 or 4 churches teaming up to, build the supply of goods and services and work with social connectors in their area. So we should get some really, really good data out of that. But, people are talking about doing themed campaigns, for example, back to school in the fall, to raise backpacks and so many other needed school supplies for kids. There could be a seniors month where we really go out and talk to businesses that support seniors and provide goods and services, for seniors. So could we do something with gently used merchandise, some kind of a swap, or, imagine sort of like a flea market type of activity, something like that? Yeah, probably, but it hasn't been tested at this point in time.
Got it. Okay. Well, I mean, it has so much potential. It's so exciting, this project. Is the hope that ultimately you'll be across Canada, or it's, really more provincial at this point?
Well, it's very interesting because there is a social innovation group called the EDGE Network. So it's the national social innovation arm of the United Church of Canada. And they just ran an unconference March 3rd to 5th. 350 organizations participated, faith-based organizations participated, including many from the US. So there's interest, in Alberta, on the West Coast. There were people from the Atlantic provinces that were asking about Stone Soup, some American churches. So I think, it has potential because, again, a technology platform, you're not limited, right, to where you could be replicating this approach. So we're excited about the potential. And that's one of the reasons I, took on the project, because it has universal appeal. And, would be just as applicable, let's say, in Denver as it would be, in Toronto, in Kingston, Ontario, in Halifax, Nova Scotia, in Los Angeles, right? Where there is a community that wants to help and people in need, this platform could work. So, there's work to be done to scale it. But the bones are there, the framework is there. There, is a great toolkit being finalized right now for new communities that want to, consider having a Stone Soup network. And that's where we are in terms of the project.
Amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about your process when you decided, when those moments that you took a pause in your life and you thought about, like, what is it that I really want to do? What was your process in figuring that out? And, what did you determine that really motivates you, that you want to get up and do every day?
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because listening to some of your other, podcasts, Megan, you talk about having gone on a journey, and some of your other guests have talked about, going on a journey. And that's really how I felt, I think, in August and September, that, I needed to be on a journey to figure out what was next. It wasn't just jumping at the first opportunity. I've built, a fairly extensive network in my career, and there were lots of people who wanted to help and lots of opportunities that, were out there. People were still hiring. There were still, but I didn't want to just take something, in response to job loss during the pandemic. I thought, okay, I do have the opportunity now to pause and really think this through. And I think for me, one of the most important things was overall wellness. I really wanted to feel like I could positively connect to this project, that it was something that I would be proud to tell my kids about, that, I could really make a difference, that I wanted to be associated with the brand and the people that, were leading this project if I was taking on, some exciting gig, which I've now done. And so that was a big part of it. I also physically and emotionally didn't feel that well at the time. I had really been doing what I've heard a number of your guests, talk about. I was checking a lot of boxes like, oh, I have an interesting job title. Oh, I'm meeting interesting people. Oh, I'm traveling. Oh, I'm making, a good salary. But I was not looking after myself physically as well as I should have. And I was not looking after myself emotionally as well as I should have. I was really burnt out. And so the other important part of that journey was thinking about, okay, what do I need to be doing differently before I sign on for anything else? And what's in and what's out? Like, what are my, no-go areas? I don't want to be working, weekends anymore. I don't want to be traveling, on the weekend, unless it's for something that I really want to do. Whereas scaling a national not-for-profit in 2018 to 2020, there was a lot of, overtime and a lot of long hours. And it was really exciting, but the burnout piece was not fun, and it just didn't make sense anymore. I didn't want to do that. So that was really important to me. And I think you've done, and I've heard a few of your other guests, I did hire a coach, and, they helped me ask myself the right questions so that I was going forward, with the right game plan, and really sensitive to the things that were important to me in terms of staying emotionally and physically well, particularly in a pandemic, right? You don't want to have a compromised immune system during a pandemic. That made no sense.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I thank you for sharing that. So can you tell us once you were clear on what your non-negotiables are, was that a conversation that you had with the people that were hiring you, or you were just looking for companies that you thought had a similar value system in that regard?
A bit of both. There were a couple of opportunities that I pulled out of because I could tell that, there wasn't going to be those clear parameters. And I could see that this probably wasn't going to be, 9 to 5 or 5 to 6 hours a day, something that I felt was, important to me. I also, I work out now every single day. It's just something that it's part of my DNA now. I need that. And, some days it's much more flexibility based yoga type of workout. Other days it's weight training, and something that, is much more of a calorie burn. I'm not into doing a whole lot of high impact stuff. Those days I think are sort of behind me, but I do a lot of hiking on the weekend and walking, and, being out in the fresh air is really, really important. So I was very clear with anybody that I talked to about the fact that, I have to have time to recharge my batteries every day, on a go forward basis. Travel would be something that I'd want to ask some tough questions about, and hours and not weekend work, things like that. Those were all parameters that I was clear about with people before I got too engaged in talking to them about any kind of work. And I'm excited about the work that Stone Soup is doing, because I'm able to take this on a half-time basis, which really allows me to have the time that is important to me for staying healthy.
Amazing. So besides hiking, which would be for me in the mindfulness category, is there something else you do for mindfulness or stress management? I mean, exercising also helps. Yeah.
So one of the things that I did when I hired a coach was I got engaged in the positive intelligence program that Dr. Shirzad Chamine developed. He's a professor at Stanford. And he's been, in the leadership space for a long time in the US. And he had developed this programming, which he calls an operating system for leaders. Probably more than 10 years it's been around, but they did not open it up to, a broad range of coaches until I think just before or at the beginning of the pandemic. So the woman that I had gotten connected to for my personal business coach was able to, because she was a master coach, she was able to get engaged in this train the trainer for positive intelligence very early on in the pandemic, and asked me, hey, do you want to be part of my pilot group, going through this boot camp training? And I jumped at the chance. And so there's an app that you can, put on your phone. And so I spend between 15 and 20 minutes on mindfulness activities in small bite-sized chunks. They're as small as 2 minutes, and you can go up to 12 minutes. But I tend to really like the 5-minute ones, particularly the ones that are designed to be done when walking or moving. So, I'll put my earbuds in and I'll turn on my app on the phone, and I will just focus on, those mindfulness activities for 2 minutes, 5 minutes. And like I said, I aim to do it 20 minutes a day.
Awesome. Well, later, will you share me the link for
sure.
this coach? And
yeah,
I have never heard of that, and I'm so interested. And I'm always looking for new tools to share with my clients. So can you tell us, or go back to you? I mean, as far as I understand, basically you hired a coach at a moment when you didn't have a job or any clarity on what the next one would be. So for a lot of people, like, that's a hard thing to understand. What were you thinking, and how did you make that decision?
What was I thinking? I think what I was thinking was, again, that I was sort of at a reflection point, an important reflection point in my life. You know, in the first round, when I was leaving corporate Canada, the reflection point was, I've got small children. I was traveling way too much. And, you know, it just wasn't bringing me the joy that I wanted. And I didn't see that climbing the corporate ladder was going to make me happy for another 20 years. Right. And so I kind of went on my own journey, but I went and talked to an awful lot of people, right? There weren't as many coaches back then as well, or not as many good ones as, you know, you can find now. And so in this, I think it was the same thing. I came to a realization that I needed some help, that if I was going to do this on my own, it might take longer and I might not be as focused. You know, I wouldn't get to where I wanted to be sooner. I did have friends reaching out to me trying to help. I did have friends reaching out to me saying, oh, you should interview for this role or that role. And I didn't want to take 5 months, let's say, to figure out what was next, right? There also was some financial pressure, right, to keep the ball moving in terms of maybe generating some income, right, for the family. So I just started connecting with people to try to get recommendations in terms of, you know, a coach. And I think I ended up interviewing 3 on the phone, and the person that there had been a list of maybe 12 of people that I had done, you know, some background research on, and spoke to friends. Do you know this person? Have you heard of this person? And I talked to 3 on the phone, and the person that I ultimately hired, there was just a strong feeling of this person can help. And to be blunt, one person was a pretty aggressive salesperson, which really, you know, turned me off. They were more interested in selling their programming than in understanding what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I like to use the word alignment, and
absolutely.
Essentially, it's like any relation, like it's a mentor of sorts. And so if there's not some sort of chemistry and mutual respect, it's not really going to work.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I love how you interviewed them. So what was your main question, if you will?
Ooh, I'd have to go back and look at my notes. What was my main question? I asked them about their methodology. I asked them what kind of clients they felt they had their best alignment with. You know, what journeys were they best at supporting? Who were their sort of, you know, key client groups that came back to them again and again and referred people to them. And then I asked them about the methodology that they used, and, you know, what kind of a commitment they asked people to make. You know, what would that look like? Obviously, because, you know, there's always you have a budget in mind. And some people sell a very rigid program, and that wasn't what I was looking for. You know, like, you have to make a 6-month commitment, and the lowest, you know, entry point is $4,500, whatever it was, right? I was looking for somebody who was willing to be flexible and try it out for 6 to 8 weeks to see where we landed, and then look at whether there was going to be, you know, I would re-engage them. And I got that down to about 3 people. And again, this person just seemed to have the best understanding of what I was trying to do, and had helped people in similar, you know, situations to me.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think most of the amazing coaches I've worked with, they have like a secret menu, if you will. Like there might be some public menu that doesn't seem very flexible, but at the end of the day, I mean, most of them are interested in serving. And as a coach as well, like when we have those initial conversations, it's also in my interest to find out if I can really help you, right? So
absolutely,
it kind of goes both ways, that first call.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for sharing that part of your journey with us. And what did you want to leave off with? I mean, how are you feeling now? Did you start coaching about a year ago?
Yeah. So I had been informally, coaching people, in particular young people, for years, because I had been a college careers professor part-time while I was running a not-for-profit. Again, a mentor in my life in the training world asked me whether I might consider taking something on. And my boss at the not-for-profit was willing to let me, take time off in the middle of the day to, teach. In those days, I physically had to show up at the college and be in the classroom. And so I had done a lot of work with students who were looking for internships in particular, and some of them came back as graduating students and asked for help in terms of resume writing and interview coaching and all of those kinds of things. I had been a volunteer sports coach, figure skating coach for a number of years, starting even back when I was a teenager. So I had a lot of coach training and sports related, training, and a lot of coaching experience when I, decided to team up with my colleague Sue for the My Career Launch program that we're developing to help post-secondary graduates. That's been about a year, and we've leveraged all of the work that we had done in the not-for-profit space, working with that same, new grads, demographic. So it's something I really enjoy doing. And I love, watching new grads get hired, and love watching people go on their, their own career journey. So I'm excited about continuing to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I sure wish I had someone like you back then. I mean, coming out of university, I just felt so lost. I mean, I guess I sort of found my way little by little, but I certainly didn't feel like there was a concrete plan. Like I was, in fact, very envious of my friends that went into more traditional jobs where there was like a very clear, path and support system, arguably. But yeah, so those of us that were in the sort of mishmash of social sciences came out with an idea of what we wanted to do, but I actually started out in the non-for-profit industry in Toronto way back when, but I did a lot of fundraising. Yeah, I worked for a non-for-profit that focused on genocide prevention.
Wow.
Yeah, so it had a university program. I mean, I was always not shocked, but impressed to hear that there's always about 20 or odd students that come to this. It's like a special summer program for the students that are already studying the extremes of human rights issues, if you will. Not always exactly genocide, but they tend to come from the countries, of course, that have suffered directly from those things. But anyway, I learned so much, and it was an amazing experience. But at the end of the day, I just didn't quite find my footing in the non-for-profit industry in Toronto. It was, it's a long story. I won't get into it, but I love that you're doing that. I think, especially right now, I'm sure, because they've I'm guessing university students, like they've kind of felt like the bottom has been pulled out on them in terms of next steps. So if somebody that might want to work with you, how should they contact you?
So the best place to find me is either on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Verity Dimock on LinkedIn. And also they can find us on Teachable. So on the Teachable platform, My Career Launch School is where our programming is. And our first program, the Why Hire You mini course, is free. So any students can, check us out by test driving the Why Hire You mini course on the Teachable platform.
Oh, I love that. Okay, well, I'll ask you to send me all those links so we can.
I will.
Show notes. And if somebody is a company or a service provider that's interested in donating goods, do they need to be in the Toronto area, or can it be? I guess it depends on the service.
We have a bunch of other communities that are really keen to get going, so I can probably connect them to people in a number of communities that want to launch Stone Soup Networks now that the marketing has really started, now that the pilot is complete. So they can reach me at Verity at stonesoupnetwork.ca. So Verity at stonesoupnetwork.ca if they're interested, or go to the stonesoupnetwork.ca website, and there are a couple of different ways to contact us there. Yeah, we'd love to hear from them.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Is there any sort of parting words you want to leave us with?
I think while it's been the worst of times in many ways, the last year, it's also been, the best of times in some ways. There is a lot of hope now that vaccines are here. And I think it's important for people, this, again, inflection point that we've had over the last year. If people are, feeling like they're on a journey, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you, and, you need to find that balance, right, between making a living and having a healthy life, both mentally and physically. And I'm excited about, all of the work that people are doing in the wellness space now. I think it's so important. Talking to young people, that's one of the things that, they want to feel like they're joining an organization or taking on a job where they can make a positive difference every day, where, the organizations are purposeful and values driven. We got a lot of work to do in that space, but, I'm hopeful. So those are my parting words.
I love it. Let's leave it off with hopeful.
Hopeful.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure getting to know you and hearing about your journey, and hopefully we'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening to Energetically You. I hope that this episode has helped you to tune into your natural energy sources so that you feel more energized and focused throughout your day. If you enjoyed the episode, please take a second to rate and review. Each review helps us to help more ambitious women just like you accomplish their goals. Don't forget to take a screenshot, share it on social, or in your Instagram stories, and tag me at Megan Swan Wellness. See you soon.